Are we having technical difficulties now?
Nope, we're live.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Hello again, everybody. This is the Sport Hounds. This is Brad Ryer, and Rob will not be with us. We have Matt and Sudi. Is that correct?
Cincinnati, yes.
Sudi, thank you. He is from the Hockey Happy Hour and Lazy Booking. You can see him on Thursday night at 7:30 for Lazy Booking, and at 10 o'clock Hockey Happy Hour. And I have to tell you, I kind of like Hockey Happy Hour. As you guys all know, I love my hockey. We were scheduled to have Grant Ledyard on tonight. I don't know if he's going to come on or not. Last I heard, his dog was loose in his yard and he's chasing it. So I don't know exactly what happened. Hopefully, Grant will get his dog and get back inside, and we can get him on the show. In the meanwhile, the poll question today, and before we get into the business part, poll question today is: the Washington Redskins are no longer the Washington Redskins. They have changed their name. So I'd like you, the fans, to come up with some creative names, and don't feel anything's off base. Okay? We want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. So feel free to comment on the live comments, and go ahead. Go ahead, Matt.
You can always call them the Washington Trumps. So, But more importantly, the show's brought to you by Dr. Paul Vidal, Specialized Physical Therapy, and also Ambuck Services for both your lawn and for any kind of aches and pains that you have. For Specialized Physical Therapy, you can find them in Cherry Hill, Burlington, and Princeton, New Jersey. You can find them on the web at www.specializedphysicaltherapy.com. Dr. Paul Vidal will take care of all those aches and pains. And for Ambuck Services, they'll take care of everything. Trim the trees. They'll make sure your deck looks nice. Everything. You can call them at 856-879-5530. Ambuck Services.
Okay, we're going to get right down to it. We have the hockey playoffs coming up August 1st.
No.
I know your Flyers get a bye. My Rangers open up with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Rangers did win all 4 games. We all know that. However, just a little reminder that when the Rangers played the Hurricanes this year, they gave up 40 shots in 3 of the 4 games. Now, I mean, they won the games, and I get that. They were pretty close. One of the Rangers beat them up pretty well, but they gave up 40 shots a game. Now, Lundqvist was in the goal for 2 of those 3 games that they gave up 40 shots. Igor Shesterkin, who I think is going to be a really good goalie, I'm just wondering, in a playoff situation, if the Rangers are giving up 40 shots a game, are we going to be able to beat that team with him in goal? Because Henrik was good the first half of the season. It just seemed like he aged overnight. And, when it came to December, for whatever reason, it just seemed like he aged overnight. Georgiev came in. Georgiev played real well. And then they were afraid Shesterkin was going to go back to Russia because he was still stuck on the Hartford Whale. So they brought him up, and then he was spectacular. So thus the 3 goalie system, and Henrik only played, I think, 2 games. I think he played 1 against Dallas, and he got killed. Then he got killed again against the Flyers. So I think those were the only 2 games he played. So
yeah,
probably it's going to be Igor in goal. My question is, can Igor play as well as Lundqvist did in those games where the Rangers were giving up 40 shots a game? Because as good as the Rangers are, defense still is the Achilles heel on this team.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that the defense is very young, and it's still learning and it's still growing, and that's the tough part, And for my team, the Flyers, we had a young defense, and they had the same problem. We also had issues coaching wise too, which didn't help anything, and that led to a lot of moments where we were leaving the goalie out on an iceberg and just letting him like, hey, try and stop everything. And the problem is that Flyers goaltending is what it is for a long time, and they're giving up goals left and right.
You got a guy now. If you do that, he's capable of keeping you in the game.
Now, yeah, but beforehand it was a massive struggle. And then, so I think it's kind of the same thing with the Rangers. It's a young defense. They're still kind of they're still trying to find their groove. I mean, I would say this with the Rangers team, where they're at right now, they're not in a terrible place. It's just one of those things of, they're in that transitional period of going from a restart team to okay, this is a legitimate division contender every year team, where sometimes that takes 2-3 years, sometimes it takes 2, or maybe it takes 1 year. It's one of those things where over time and maturation. Also, if you could get some veteran leadership, that would help as well on the young defensive side of the puck.
Well, Trouba's supposed to be that veteran leader, and
Supposed
to be. The problem for Trouba, and it's not all Trouba's fault. Brady Shea, we were playing with Brady Shea, and Brady Shea was just absolutely atrocious this year. And the Rangers have just given him a new 4-year, $20 million contract. So come the trade deadline, ironically, the Carolina Hurricanes came calling and offered a number 1 pick for Shea, and the Rangers were basically packing his bags and flying and driving him to the airport because they couldn't get rid of him fast enough. I think that may have been part of Trouba's problem. Plus, when they brought in a defenseman to be his partner, it was Brendan Smith. Now,
yeah,
I don't dislike Brendan Smith, but let's be honest, I think you and I could probably skate close to as fast as him.
Yeah.
He's the original. I mean, he's tough. Don't get me wrong. He'll beat the crap out of you, and he will slash the hell out of you. But I mean, he's kind of like the parking cone. You can't. Jacob Trouba is probably pulling his hair out because he is a good player, but they to have him have to be on the second pair just as tough. And Tony DeAngelo to play with Mark Stahl, that's another problem because DeAngelo is a terrible defenseman, but he can skate and he can score, and he's a terrific puck mover. And Mark Stahl, again, is another parking cone back there. And I think that right now they're 2 defensemen short. I love what Adam Fox has done. I love Adam Lindgren. I think those 2 guys are going to be a top pair for the next 3 years until the the restricted free agency hits, and then everybody has to figure out, do we give them the bridge deal and then
yeah,
et cetera, and you get all kicked off. But I mean, that's going to be tough. I mean, it's a tough spot that they're going to be in there. But that's where they're really missing it, and they need 1 more forward. They preferably could use a center. Hang on, Grant Ledyard. Hello.
Hey,
Okay, how you doing, Grant? Are you have you been able to get on?
no, I just got the dog. Can we reschedule?
Yeah, you want to come on next week?
Yeah. Next week would be great.
All right.
I just got him. He went after the rabbit, and I can't let him out because he's he's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, which means he's a fucking big, strong guy, and people don't like to see him out.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's do it next week. I'll get back to you with the time. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. We're good.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, there you have it, folks. We'll have him next week.
I've never seen that happen before.
Only on the Sports Hound do you get the
live broadcasting. You don't expect a lot of things happening. And,
well, at least he didn't curse. So
at least he didn't curse.
Yeah.
I think this is the first where we've witnessed a schedule. Rescheduled interview during a live show.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, folks. I mean,
Okay.
you want to kill me for advertising? I didn't mean it. I mean, these things do happen, but
Things happen.
we'll definitely be on next week. We'll get it for. Oh, you can't make this up. But in the meantime, okay, let's get our thoughts together.
All right.
Frank, change the title. Change the title. False advertisement. We don't want to get sued.
Yeah, there you go.
Do that.
Sorry, Ranger fans. As you heard, things do happen. So next week, him and Freddie Solomon. By the way, Freddie Solomon is the one on the Eagles, not on the 49ers. My bad. We'll have to talk to the person who told me we were getting Freddie Solomon to make sure we get that right next time. But anyway, getting back to the Rangers, okay, and then the Flyers, okay. Between the two of them, I really do like what the Flyers did this year. I think the Rangers are going to have a lot tougher time with Carolina than a lot of people think. I got to see, they showed the games again on NHL Network. I think, what was it, last week? They were showing all the preview, the teams that have played. They're playing each other in the first round. They had a whole preview. Each night it was a different team. And they had, I think, 2 Ranger Hurricane games on NHL Network. And they were the 2 games that they gave up 40 shots. So I saw how Lundqvist was unbelievable. My question is, if Shesterkin can play like that, Rangers will win. I just don't know. He hasn't haven't played in a long time. They're all getting at it's like training camp. Is he going to be in top form like that? Because Carolina, that there's a lot of shots.
Here's the thing about Carolina. They had an issue with goaltending, which they've been trying to address because of injuries, which they'll be healthy now in that regard, which is what the problem was for them going into the break in the first place. Before everything stopped, they had an issue goaltending wise, and that was killing them. And now that
Mrazek was hurt.
Yeah, and that was the point. Yeah,
I think they may have not even made the playoffs had they continued the season. I think the Rangers would have snuck in, and they would have been on the outside looking in because they were losing every game, and so were the Islanders for that matter.
Oh yeah, but
I think
both of those teams.
The Rangers has just come off a heartbreaking overtime loss to the Colorado Avalanche in Colorado. So the Rangers were playing good hockey at that point. So in any event, it's not going to be as easy as, they won 4-0, but I'm here to tell you guys, I watched the games again, and because you forget, it's been a while. Just remember, they gave up a lot of shots, and if Shesterkin is not playing like Lundqvist did, the Rangers may be in for some trouble. So could be. Take us. I'm a Ranger fan, guys, but just to let you guys know, it could be trouble. Now, as far as the Flyers, fill me in a little bit. What's going on? Is everybody healthy? Is everybody going to play?
Well, for now, so far it looks like everybody's going to play. No one on the Flyers has opted out. Health-wise, besides obviously Oscar Lindblom, who hopefully is, still on those steps to recovery, and Nolan Patrick, who had that migraine disorder from the beginning of the year. Those are the only 2 definite outs. So
they played all season, so that's not really. At this point, you've had ample time to replace them and have adequate representation for those 2 guys.
They'll be no real major injuries.
Yeah, they'll be back by the beginning of December because I think that's when the season starts, right?
Well, they're eyeing that. They're eyeing a December 1st start back up.
Yeah. So, if you look at the Flyers, most likely they're going to be playing the Penguins in the first round. Now, I had talked to Rob about this, and we were talking a lot about this. The Flyers having to, and we talked to Brian Prompt about this, and Brian Prompt didn't think it was that big a deal, but I tend to disagree. Playing the Penguins, your arch rival, in the first round is got to be their worst nightmare, to be quite honest with you.
Well, it depends on how the team's played against Pittsburgh all year, because I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen the team of the Flyers that is nowhere near the level that Pittsburgh is, and they're just getting skated around, shot around, just beaten to a pulp. I saw that in the last playoff run, where this was a team that could not beat Pittsburgh. Like, they struggled mightily against them.
I'm not worried about whether they could beat Pittsburgh. I think they could beat Pittsburgh. My problem is they're going to be so up to play Pittsburgh. Okay, are they, if they beat Pittsburgh, are they going to be emotionally spent because that's their rival? That's the team everybody hates. As a fan, let's be honest. If the Rangers played the Islanders in the first round and the Rangers beat the Islanders in the first round, I'd be so happy. I don't know if I have anything left for the second round.
Well, to be fair, There's something to, yeah, you're right. To be fair, there is something to believe in that, because in 2012, when the Flyers beat Pittsburgh, the very next round they sputtered out and they lost in 5 to the New Jersey Devils, which is always very pleasant to do. It just, and that is, that's a perfect example of their Stanley Cup was beating Sydney and beating his team. And once they did that, they went up against the Devils. They won the first game barely in OT. And then after that, they were terrible for the rest of that series. Like, they couldn't do a damn thing against the Devils. So there's a point to that. It is a double-edged sword when you face your rival in the first round, because when you're so motivated to beat them, sometimes you're not. But to be fair, and this is not the Flyers, but look at the Capitals. The Capitals, a couple years back when they won the Cup, they beat Pittsburgh in the semis to do it. You would think maybe that would sputter that team out, where, okay, they beat Pittsburgh now for the first time in forever. Now they may not handle Tampa Bay, because Tampa's a real good team, and they may lose to them, and Tampa may go to the Stanley Cup Finals. But they beat Tampa and they beat Vegas, and they went on to win their first ever Cup. So the possibility's there.
That's true. No. It can work. It can work both ways. But I think the Flyers right now are a better team than Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is top heavy. I think the Flyers send out 4 solid lines.
They do.
They send out 6 good defensemen. Okay, they don't have any of these old parking cones, as I call them.
They don't have RJ Umberger.
No, they don't have any. You don't have McDonald anymore back there.
Oh, thank God.
You have a bunch of real mobile, good defensemen who are puck movers. I just think at this point, I don't like Pittsburgh's goaltending situation. Matt Murray hasn't played well all year. He really hasn't. And unless he picks up his game, he's not. One thing about Fleury could play lousy for a while, but when Fleury picked up his game, and he proved it when they won those 2 cups in a row, when he got on top of his game, he was impossible to beat. And I don't know that,
absolutely.
I don't know that Matt Murray is that guy. I mean, he helped them win the Stanley Cup the one year.
Yeah.
When Fleury got hurt, and I understand that, but that team was also a great team.
Well, and to be fair, like when he got hurt and Murray came in, that was unexpected, and they just went on that run. Like you said, Pittsburgh was a machine. The very following year, some people forget, Murray was not playing well the following year, and Fleury was starting over him for a period of time, and he entered the playoffs with them, and Fleury got them into the second round. Murray took over after that and then carried it on through. People forget that he was sharing time with Fleury the very following season.
Right, and then the following season, when they won their second Stanley Cup, Fleury won the cup for them.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, he was sharing time with them. Yeah,
he literally beat the Capitals by himself that year.
Yeah,
the Capitals dominated that series, just from the end-to-end stuff. The puck was in Pittsburgh's end 90% of the time, or so it seemed. I mean, and the problem was that when Pittsburgh counterattacked, they have such lethal players that when they would counterattack, that's how they beat you. And the Capitals just never adjusted to that. Until Pittsburgh started 2 years ago, I'm sorry. Pittsburgh finally just started getting a little older, especially defensively, and the Capitals were finally able to take care of them. But I think
plus Pittsburgh was the thing with Pittsburgh too was they started seeing a lot of what Washington was doing. Washington always tried to check them real hard and try to go at them as hard as they could. And the thing was that they wanted to compete with that side of things too. So they made some trades that kind of bit them in the ass too, on top of it, and lost some players.
Well, they slowed themselves down, which was a big mistake because and the problem was I hear you in the fact that Washington was dominating along the boards and they were owning the puck. But I mean, really, what they needed to do was increase the speed level, not decrease it and try to match size. Yeah. Really, nobody could match size with them at that point. They were just too big, too strong, and too fast. And let's see, David Roscoe we have here, and Prism 280, Arizona Coyotes will eliminate the Nashville Predators, and the Florida Panthers will eliminate the Islanders, and Carolina will eliminate the Rangers. I can't really argue with any of them. Again, I don't know about Carolina beating the Rangers, but I tried to make a point for Carolina. apparently some of you guys do agree with me. If the Rangers are gonna give up 40 shots a game, I don't know that Shesterkin is good enough at this young stage of his career that he can pull out wins giving up 40 shots a game.
The only thing I saw that was the only thing I saw from Rosca that was kind of questionable was the Islanders and the Panthers. Even though the Islanders haven't been playing great coming towards that break, the issue with Florida has been their goaltending. Bobrovsky's been playing like garbage this year.
We've been playing like garbage for 2 years now.
Yeah, and so it's becoming to the point where you're wondering, is Florida going to be able to even beat New York at this point? Because it's like, if you don't have good goaltending against the Islanders, say what you will about them playing well, if the Islanders' offense gets going, it's going to be kind of tough for them if they're giving up goals, Well,
also, the Islanders do have a pretty good power play.
That
and
too.
If Florida starts taking stupid penalties, a guy like Matthew Barzal can fill the net, and that would be a big problem for the Florida Panthers. The one thing the Islanders do, the Islanders play tight. They play very tight, and when you beat the Islanders, you have to play that ugly game with them, and and you have to try. And if you can get them to play the skating game, you can beat the Islanders. The Rangers beat the Islanders 3 out of 4 games this year, and they did it by skating and skating and skating and not getting into and not allowing the Islanders to dictate the ugly. If the Islanders dictate that ugly, they're going to beat Florida.
True. Yeah, I got to ask you a question. As a New York fan, being the Rangers fan, how does it feel to have kind of like the Islanders and the Rangers both kind of in the same place? They're both kind of on the rise as teams. Like the Islanders, we don't know what's going to happen with them because we've seen them on the rise for so long and see them fail. So we don't know what's going to happen with them. But with the Rangers, we're seeing them kind of rise. They're kind of at the similar levels. How do you feel as a Rangers fan feeling like this Islanders rivalry is kind of starting to get rebooted a little bit because it's not been there because the Islanders have been so garbage for so long?
Well, I don't think it's ever really. I don't think it's ever been over. I mean, I think it's been with the fans, it's never died. But with the players, I think you're right. I think as these teams both start to get better, I think that you're going to see a genuine hate by both of them towards each other. I'll tell you what. When Tortorella was the coach of the Rangers, okay, there was some bitter hate. I mean, if you remember, there was a couple of games. One was at the Garden and one was at the Nassau Coliseum, where they lined up at center ice to start the game, and they all dropped the gloves. That was happening with them, and it happened with the Devils. And I mean, as many fights as the Rangers have had with the Flyers, they never started right at the beginning of the game. They didn't wait till the puck was dropped and then start right at the beginning of the game like that. So, I honestly do think, though, at this point, I think the Rangers are a little ahead of the Islanders. I do, because I'll tell you what, Panarin is a lot better than I even thought. And all the money they're paying him, every dime, to me, is worth it. And Mika Zibanejad has become a superstar. He always seems to know. He loves that. He loves coming in and sneaking into that left side of the net on the off wing and tapping in those passes. And, on the power play, he's very good at doing that because the Rangers guys at the point, whether it's Fox or Tony DeAngelo, are real good at threading the needle with those passes, and he slams them home. And a lot of times they'll send the puck to Panarin, and then Panarin, as you know, is an incredible passer as well. So he'll sneak on that left side, on the left doorstep, kind of like what Simmons used to do, and just and slam it in. Except I think Mika's a little bit more talented than Simmons. Nothing personal to Simmons, but
I mean, we got the best years out of Simmons, but then we started to see that sharp decline. So it's like, yeah, all right.
You shipped him off to the Devils at the right time. And I think he ended up in Buffalo, which is really unfortunate for him this year. So
face worse than death at this point.
I think so. As far as the Flyers, I think the Rangers are in good shape. They're not going to win a cup this year, but you know what? Let's see what happens in the offseason. I'm really looking forward to next season.
It's going to be interesting because when you look at the division that we're in, I hate the Metropolitan Division for a number of reasons, just because of how sharp this division is.
It's loaded.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to start seeing that transition where the Capitals are getting older, the Penguins are getting older, and they're going to start to decline. Yeah.
Doing it. I mean, I'll tell you what, the Flyers, the last time they played the Capitals, they smacked them.
Oh, they smoked them. Yeah, it wasn't even a game.
Yeah,
I was expecting something intense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Capitals got off to a pretty good start that game, and then the Flyers just gave them the back of their hand. I mean, that was unbelievable. Really, the only team the Flyers had trouble with this year, to be quite honest with you, the only team I can remember that really kind of beat them up a little bit was Tampa Bay, and it wasn't that bad. They got shut out in the 1-0 game at home, and then they lost that game, and they gave up a lot of goals in the game in Tampa Bay. I think that was a shootout, which they'll know next time. Alain Vigneault will make sure that they don't get into shootouts with them. But I think if they can avoid Tampa Bay, I mean, I think they match up pretty well with Boston. I think they're a good defensive team. I don't know about Tuukka Rask. He's getting kind of old, long in the tooth.
Well, Tuukka, I mean, he got blown up in Game 7 last year, So I mean, when that happened, I was shocked. Like he absolutely got blown the fuck up in that game. I was like, how is St. Louis killing them right now? This is in Boston. This isn't even in St. Louis. They played better in St. Louis. What happened? Like I'm happy, but what happened?
Exactly. That's my whole point. I don't know about Tuukka Rask. Looks to me like the same way Lundqvist is when Lundqvist started his decline. I see similarities with what's going on with them. Lundqvist would have 3 or 4 really good games, then he'd have 2 or 3 bad games, and then he'd come back and have 3 or 4 good games, then he'd have 2 or 3 bad games. The problem was when he was bad, he was just an open window, and I think Rask has experienced that same problem, and I think most really good goalies who get old, that's what happens. And I think you're starting to see that with Rask, and I'll tell you what, I think the Flyers match up well with the Bruins. I hate to say it, but I think they could beat them.
It would be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if my heart will be able to take another Bruins Flyer series because I hate facing them. Just them and the Penguins and the Devils. Like, even when the Sabres back in the day, I didn't want to face them because it's just like you never knew what was going to happen. Like with those teams nowadays, it's But what's Prism saying? Pronger's best buddy. Let's see here. But if you're Buffalo, would you trade the 8th overall pick to Vancouver for Besser? I see a report Forever Blue Shirts saying he'd be a perfect fit for the Rangers. Besser would be great in a blue for the Rangers.
For the 8th pick in the draft, yeah, that's a no-brainer. For Bosert's what, 23?
Yeah, he's super young.
He's good. I mean, he's okay. I get it because I think the situation with him is that he's got another 2 years to go on his contract, and I think he's making like 5.7 1 year and maybe 6.5 the next year. So he's on the hook for some pretty big money the next 2 years. That's why they're thinking that they might trade Bosert. I get that, but man, Buffalo trades the 8th pick. If Buffalo could trade the 8th pick and get him, I think Buffalo would do it in a minute. To be honest with you, that would make Mr. What's his name?
Eichel.
That would make Eichel Motorcycle very, very happy. But the problem with Buffalo right now is that they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They've made a lot of really questionable trades. Ryan O'Reilly, trading him was just the most ridiculous trade. I mean, all you had to watch the finals last year, just ridiculous. And then you also you trade Kane, and what did you get for him? I mean,
nothing.
If you knew Kane, see, the thing is with Kane, they waited so long. They waited till the trade deadline to send him to San Jose. You knew he wasn't going to re-sign with them. Why didn't you trade him the summer before that when you'd have a year or 2 years of him on the contract? You could have gotten half their team for him.
Yeah, because, you knew that Kane was probably not going to last there because he was being a cancer like he had been in Winnipeg, and that's why they got rid of him in the first place. It's just
absolutely.
Yeah, so
I think Kane was, when they were in Atlanta, he was causing trouble there too.
Yeah, and that's why they needed to get rid of him because they realized it's like this guy is he's causing more headaches than anything else. We got to get rid of this guy, And so when they send him out, it's just like, you had an opportunity with a guy who has a ton of potential, and you saw it in San Jose, and it's just like you could have gotten something for him, but you got nothing. It's like
they waited way too long. I feel bad for Buffalo, and we talk about Buffalo because Buffalo was basically Grant Ledyard's team, so obviously I did my homework on Buffalo, and it was it's really a shame about what's going on with them because I mean they should be better now. I mean they're like the new Edmonton. You know, before Edmonton finally got lucky enough to get McDavid. I mean they're getting first round picks every year, and you know nothing would happen. They got Hall, who was a bum. He's not a bum, but he's just not. I mean, I know he won the Hart Trophy, but you know what I mean. When he was on Edmonton, he was a bum. Okay, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, another bum with Edmonton for a first round pick. Come on, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, he's more of a support player now to Draisaitl and McDavid, if anything.
Yeah, but he was. I think he was like the first pick in the draft, wasn't he?
He was the first overall.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with Edmonton. They've had all these first overall picks, and you know Buffalo is experiencing the same thing. You know, they get Eichel as the second pick, and Eichel has been fantastic. But then they get Dahlin, and Dahlin's been okay. But I mean, you know, first round pick. I hate drafting defensemen as a first round pick because you never really get full value of a guy when you draft a defenseman. Usually, when you get the first pick, you want to get the guy who's going to get you 100 points a year, you know, and have the capability of getting 50 goals. The defenseman, I wouldn't have picked the defenseman first.
Well, the problem is with defensemen is like, well, for an example, with the Flyers, the reason why they were able to get away with picking first round, getting defensemen was because they had enough players that were already on the roster. They had some signed to crazy contracts, and that's why they couldn't put anybody up there. But at the same time, they had a chance to maturate in the AHL. And that's why when they came up, they were ready for it. You know, there was only
but they weren't the first pick in the draft, though.
They weren't the first overall, but they were first rounders. You know what I mean?
First rounders is one thing. Picking in the first round, I'm fine with that. I'm talking about the first pick in the draft.
Oh, the number one over. Okay, I got you on that. Okay, gotcha. Same wavelength now.
That is never. I don't care what anybody says. That's never a good move unless you think the guy is going to be Bobby Orr. You don't do that. You know, Prism has got this thing about Bozer. I'm not so sure Vancouver's going to trade him yet. They don't have to trade him right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, it depends on if the deal is really nice, you know. And the thing is with Buffalo, it's like, okay, well, what do they have besides that pick that they can throw in there? Because, you know, I would have to think that not just a pick you would want for him. They might want a player.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm asking for Dahlin. Or Rasmus, what's his name?
Ristolainen, yeah, you could do that with that. I mean, and then with Montreal, they've got players to choose from that you can sacrifice out there. But then also on top of that, Montreal will probably have to give up a couple of players because you know we don't know where they're picking yet. And they're not going to be picking in that top 8, so it's a little different of a situation with them.
Unless they get lucky and they get the first pick and get Lafreniere.
That's true.
That's why Montreal can't really afford to make that trade because just in case they end up winning the lottery, then they'd look foolish.
Yeah. So
I don't know about Montreal doing that. I mean, because you know Vancouver is not going to wait till the draft if they're going to trade for him.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want Montreal to make that commitment. And if I'm Montreal, I really got to think long and hard about that. That would be like asking the Rangers to trade their first round pick. You know, for somebody, you can't do that.
Well, it's weird because now you guys are in the spot with all the qualifiers. Like, well, we can't trade our first round pick because we don't know where we're picking yet, and we don't know if we're going to get that first overall pick. So it'd be kind of dumb to trade it. You know,
if the Rangers beat Carolina, okay, and then Toronto loses to Columbus, which I think is going to happen. By the way, I love Columbus in that series. If both Toronto and Carolina are eliminated from the playoffs, the Rangers could, in theory, get one of their are going to get one of their picks for Shea, and that could end up being the number 1 pick too.
That's true.
So
that's true.
I mean, yeah, you know, that's the whole point. So you know, you have to really think about that too. So even if the Rangers win the first round, they have a chance to still get him. So the Rangers can't be doing that either. They can't be messing around with first round picks. So because that they could be in their little lottery too. Now, if the Rangers lose, then it doesn't really make much of a difference because Carolina is going to be in the next round. They're not going to be eligible. And if Toronto wins or lose, even if Toronto loses, Carolina is going to take Toronto's pick, and then the Rangers will get stuck with Carolina's pick. So they won't get Lafreniere. So that would be where that ends up going. So we'll see about that. But getting back to the Flyers again, okay, most likely, as I said, first round matchup is going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins because I can't imagine Montreal beating the Penguins in the first round.
I mean, the only way that they could conceivably do it is if Price plays out of his mind. But unless Price does that, Pittsburgh will probably win that series. Even if Price is playing well, you still have Crosby, you still have Malkin, you still have a tough offense you got to go up against. It's still very possible. Even if Price is playing Vezina-style hockey, he could still wind up getting beaten that series.
The thing is, that team is bad. That's a bad hockey team. They only had 71 points.
Yeah, they were. Rob put it best on my show. Rob Povia, he put it best on my show. They are the definition of the bubble teams. The team that clearly should not be here, but they are.
Yeah, no, they're a bad. I mean, listen, I know the Rangers came in 11th, but they had 79 points.
Yeah, they were going to hit 80.
No, sorry, they had 78 points. The Islanders, Columbus, and Carolina had 79, 80, and 81.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were disgustingly far behind. The Canadians had 71 points, and they were a bad hockey team, and everybody was beating the crap out of them. And they can't stop anybody. Their defense is horrible. I don't care how well Price plays. That defense is horrible. They're going to give up a lot of goals. They really can't score. I don't see there's any way that they beat the Penguins. I think the Penguins go through them like a knife through butter, to be honest with you.
So you're thinking that this is like a 3-game sweep, basically?
Yeah, I think they smoke them, and then they play the Flyers, and I think the Flyers will beat them, but I think it's going to be. You just hope that series doesn't go 7, because if that's a 7-game series, and they're like life and death. The next round, they're probably going to play Tampa Bay, and you can basically throw the first game away if you're going 7 against the Penguins.
That's going to be a tough one, because Tampa being who they are, and here's the thing. I know a lot of people were saying about the Flyers, so like, oh, we were going to win the Cup this year, or this is going to be your year. I'm one of the guys who's kind of like, listen, I love where we're at too, but I'm kind of one of those guys who's like, listen, it's possible. It's a dark horse possibility, but it's a dark horse possibility. And the reason why I say that is because this is the first time that this team's going to have an advantage going into the playoffs. This is uncharted territory for Carter Hart and for some of the other young players. And you're
like favored, and that's different.
Yeah, and then I actually really think Tampa's probably going to win it this year. And the reason why I say that is because if you follow the trend of what's been going on, a lot of teams that we thought their window's shut, they had their chance. They screwed it up every single time. They're never going to win it. We thought that about St. Louis because they could never get through Chicago. They won last year.
We thought that about St. Louis 50 times.
Yeah, and yet here they are. They wound up winning it. And then we thought it about Washington. We thought they can't get through Pittsburgh. No matter what they do, they will never beat Pittsburgh. And finally, they did it, and they won the Cup. So if you're following the trends, it's Tampa's turn to actually do that, where it's like, okay, Tampa has disappointed every single year, whether it's against Pittsburgh, against Washington, against Boston. It doesn't matter. They always disappoint.
The one thing
this may very well be that moment where they break that trend.
Well, the one thing that they've got going for them, and they are an older team, but they got all this rest. And I think for guys like Ryan McDonough and Steven Stamkos should be playing because I would imagine he'd be healthy by now.
They say he's hurt though, but I don't know.
Yeah, but August 1st.
Yeah.
You still got a couple more weeks, and they're not gonna tell you if he's gonna be able to play. It won't even be August 1st. They get a bye in the first round. You're talking like August 10th. Okay, so he's still got another month. You think they're really gonna tell you if he's gonna be able to play or not? They're gonna say 2 days before. Guess what, everybody? And then you're gonna have to deal with all those great players on that team. And what? They're all old, but they're all gonna be rested, and that's gonna make them tough because you have to think that part of the problem for them the last couple of years is that as an aging team, guys like Tyler Johnson, McDonough. I'm trying to think of some of the older players in that team. I can't remember them all now, but they got a lot of older players, and that rest is going to do them a lot of good.
Big time. And also on top of it as well, they have Andre Vasilevsky in goal. And if he plays up to his potential, he's going to shut almost every team out. Even the best teams in the East are going to have a hard time scoring on it if he's on his game.
Yeah, and Prism 280 thinks the same thing with the Stars. You're not wrong about that. And, Bishop has had an excellent bounce-back year this year. So
yeah.
There's always a chance that Dallas could get in. I mean, personally, I've been touting the Avalanche all year. I liked Philip Grubauer as their goalie. I thought that was a great move that they made with Washington because there was no way they could keep him. They, unfortunately for them, fortunately for them, I should say, but unfortunately for them, they have Braden Holtby, who's one of the best goalies in the league. You can't have a guy as good as Grubauer as your backup goalie. You can't expect the guy who could start for 90% of the teams in the league for him to want to just be a backup goalie.
No,
you could see how good he was last season too.
Yeah,
so then
absolutely.
You could see how good he was, and to put him on Colorado with all that young talent. I mean, I still think Colorado is going to be the team in the West, but the Dallas Stars are going to be a dangerous team.
They were last year, and St. Louis was on that magic run, and then who would have thought physics comes back and just dick punches Dallas right out of the playoffs because it winds up bouncing off the post, hitting Bishop in the back of the helmet, flies down to the freaking blue ice, and then they just swat it into the net. It's like that is such luck that you cannot predict that. That is pure luck on St. Louis's side.
That's exactly the point. Prism likes Avs versus Blues or Philly versus Tampa in the conference finals. I can't argue with either one of those.
I could see that. I
could definitely see that. I mean, again, the only thing I worry about with the Flyers, I'm not worried about their talent. They've got enough talent. The only thing I'm worried about, and I think they'll beat Pittsburgh. The only thing I worry about with them is after they beat Pittsburgh, okay, or is it going to take a long time for them to beat them? And how beat up are they going to be after beating? I mean, I can give you another example. Okay, the Islanders last year, Pittsburgh and the Islanders have quite a rivalry too. I don't know if you're aware of how much those two teams hate each other, but they've had games where they just sat there and had fight after fight after fight. I mean, seriously, it's as I said, they kind of make the Rangers and Flyers look like choir boys at times. They hate each other. I don't know what the deal is with them, but every time I watch their games, it was like that.
I think it goes back to this. I think because back in the early 90s when the Penguins were just a dominant, difficult team to go up against, and they had Lemieux, Jágr, and that great team in 93. Yes, it was 93. 93, they played the Islanders, and the Islanders beat them. And the Islanders ended their dynasty.
And somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody, one of their goons, one of the Islanders' goons, cheap shotted Kevin Stevens.
Yes.
And knocked him out of the playoffs, which propelled the Islanders to win that series. So that just was a constant aggravation for the Penguins. So that probably is the reason.
Yeah, because when you look back at the history, with the rivalries that the Islanders have, some would say that the Flyers and the Islanders have a rivalry. I don't really see it. And maybe that's because I wasn't alive in the 80s. So maybe that's the reason why. Because I know in 1980, the Islanders and the Flyers met in the Stanley Cup Finals and the Islanders won. But after that, I missed that whole period of them being in the same division and being rivals. But, the Islanders and the Rangers, it's obvious where that rivalry comes from. It's New York rivalry.
Yeah, and their fans are the ones that started yelling 1940 all the time and poured on with the whole league. But we still yell Potvin sucks, and Potvin hasn't played since 1988. So the chant has actually gone into a third generation. So good for us. Go us.
You win the chant battle.
Yeah, because no matter what, we haven't forgotten about Ulf Nielsen. So, anyway, but getting back to the Flyers again, as I said, I really would be concerned about what happens with Pittsburgh if they could beat Pittsburgh quickly. You dispose of them like in 5 games. You get all the celebrating out of the way, then you can go in and you can play. No, wait a minute. They'd be playing Boston, wouldn't they?
Well, it depends really because they got to fight. See what's going on is they got to fight each other in matchups to determine seeding between the top 4 teams. So we don't really know where everybody's going to be. Like the Flyers could be the top seed if they go on a stunning run, and I guarantee you, if they do that, they'll lose right in the freaking second round. But if like say the Flyers are 4th, where we were originally, we may wind up drawing Washington. Who knows?
No. You know what? They'd have to play. Oh yeah, that's true. But if form holds up, okay, they'd probably have to play. Boston in the second round, then Tampa Bay.
That would be the case.
That's tough to go through that. I mean, if they have to go through Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh, Boston, and Tampa Bay, I mean, that's tough. I mean, I know they're good, but I mean, jeez, seriously?
What's Anaheim going to give up to get Stamkos? Anaheim would give up anything to get Stamkos at this point. They may give up their firstborns. If they wish.
I would think so. I would think so. Although I'll tell you what, I'd be really careful about Stamkos. Stamkos is old and he's always getting hurt. If I were Anaheim, that would not be the big time player I'd be after. I mean, you said it before, my man. Bozer would be a guy you should try to get. You could talk to the Sabres about Eichel, although I don't think they're going to trade Eichel.
No,
that's a pipe dream if anybody really thinks they're going to trade Eichel.
I heard that Buffalo fans were actually thinking about it, and I'm thinking, like, are you high? Like, listen, I know that you guys are in a losing situation, a losing culture, and it sucks. But come on.
He's only 25. You don't trade him.
Yeah. No.
They're not going to trade him. They just extended him 2 years ago.
Yeah,
he's going to be making $10 million a year. So the problem is, nobody's going to take him because nobody's going to take him because it would cost. He's going to kill your cap, and then you're going to have to trade a first-round pick at least, and probably one of your top players. So I mean, if it was a Ranger trade, okay, I could tell you exactly what they'd end up doing. They would have to give up a first-round pick. And probably Tony DeAngelo, and maybe a forward, maybe Buchnevich. That's what it would cost. And you know what? I wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't. If I'm the Rangers, I'm not doing that. That's way too much.
Well, and also on top of that, I mean,
plus you have to take the $10.5 million salary. And what happens in 2 years when you have to re-sign Mika Zibanejad?
Yeah. And then also other young talent, too, like Fox, when it's time for them to get their big pay raise. These are
2 years from now, you got him and Lindgren coming up. I mean, you have to think about that stuff. That's why I don't, and Ranger fans who think that that's going to happen, guys, calm down. Very, very unlikely.
Yeah. Now, I will say from Matthew Spills, he said earlier about Nolan Patrick possibly being a bad pick because of the migraine disorder stemming back from concussions that he had. I mean, we don't even really know if he is a bad pick yet. I mean, maybe he might be, but the thing is, too, it's like you can't predict that. And that's the thing about it. It's like, listen, we got the number 2 overall pick. We picked who was best available at that time. You roll the dice with anybody you pick at the end of the day.
Let's be honest, that season was not exactly a season that had dominant players in the draft.
No.
It's not like you had the guy in Toronto available. The porn star out there. He wasn't available. So, it's just not like that. Matthew Spills, I don't think the Flyers Penn series is close to a walk in the park. Neither one of us said that.
No, it is not a walk in the park.
We're saying that's going to be a problem for the Flyers. Yeah,
the easiest that series will be is 6 games. That's the shortest length this series is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, and it's going to be a brutal series. If one team is losing, is getting beat up badly in a game, you can guarantee in the last 5 minutes of the game, there's going to be some nasty fights. They're going to beat the hell out of each other in that series, and it's going to be very, very tough for either one of those teams. Whoever wins that series to go into the next round, and then you have to play Boston in the next round. Yikes!
That's a tough fight. But here's the thing, though. I will say this, though. I do like this, though, in one regard. Because of the Flyers being where they are, some of them have experience in the playoffs. Some of them don't. This is a great – even if you don't win the Cup this year, this is such a huge step in the right direction because you have home ice advantage, technically. And on top of that, it's something to build towards where, hey, we beat Pittsburgh, we faced Boston, and say we beat Boston in surprising fashion, and then we go on to face Tampa and we lose to Tampa. It's like, great. That's a great season. That's where, okay, this is something to measure up to their –
That's a great way to start building. I mean, like, God.
Yeah.
Know, that's a terrific – that's the whole point. I mean, it's going to be hard for them only because – yeah, they have some experienced players, but the goalie doesn't have the experience in the playoffs. A lot of their young defensemen don't have experience in the playoffs. Yeah, I know Niskanen does, but he's only one guy. I mean, and as great as Kevin Hayes was during the season, is he going to play like that in the playoffs? I don't know. I mean,
with the rest, you don't know.
I mean, he was on such a roll. Is he going to pick up? I mean, he never played the way he did with the Rangers, the way he has with the Flyers this year. We never saw that. We saw when he was with the Rangers. Quite honestly, we saw a guy who mailed it in half the time. I mean, maybe I can't even understand why he'd do that, but he'd be lazy and sometimes make dumb plays. I mean, I can remember the Rangers losing a game because they scored a goal and he was offside. And the reason he was offside, he was standing next to the blue line when they came and the Rangers came in on a 2-on-1 and scored. He was standing like a couple of inches past the blue line. He wasn't even paying attention to where he was. And I remember the game because it was against the Maple Leafs, and the coach called to the challenge, and there he is standing about maybe 2-3 inches past the blue line, and you're like, what the hell is he doing? And, after that, a lot of fans in New York turned against him because it was just stupid stuff like that, like not diving to clear the puck when he's killing penalties, stuff like that. And when he was with the Flyers, he was doing it. And he's got the same coach, too. That's why it's hard to understand what was going on with him. Because he's got a lot of talent.
I don't know, but maybe it was the trip out to Winnipeg that maybe changed things for him. Maybe he just got a different mentality when he went out there. Sometimes that happens when you have somebody traded off and they go and they have a change of scenery. Sometimes it either breathes new life into them or they kind of get an idea of, okay, this is how I should play the game. Or maybe this coach unlocked something that I didn't realize, and now he's coming back. East, and now he's on a team where he can apply the things that he learned out in Winnipeg or what have you. But I do know when we signed him for the massive contract we gave him and with the no movement clause, I was not happy with it. I was like, what the hell is this? We just got out of the Andrew McDonald deal and we just put ourselves right back into this spot with Hayes, because I just said it before, Hayes, to me, he was not a proven player, at least not in my eyes.
He would get you 50 points a year, but he'd always get hurt. And, he was one of these guys. He used to pull a Chris Kreider and show up some nights and not show up the other nights.
Yeah, so I was a little concerned about that.
Yeah, and he did that quite often with the Rangers. That was the problem with him.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess when they traded Zuccarello, I mean, when he was with Zuccarello, he finally started playing better because Zuccarello was such a great playmaker for him. The last year he was on the Rangers, he did start playing a lot better. I mean, he did look good that year. Before they traded him to Winnipeg. So, but I mean, honestly, for the Rangers, if you look at it realistically, they traded Trouba for Hayes. So you can't complain about that.
No, absolutely.
They had to get, even if Trouba turns out to not be a number one defenseman, he's definitely a number 2 or a number 3. So,
absolutely.
And they had to get a guy like that. They desperately need a banger. So, I mean, getting him, that was something they had to do.
Yeah, when the Rangers got Trouba and they got Panarin, I was like, "Ooh, okay, the Rangers are making some moves here," and they had some young talent. We knew they did, but it's one of those moments where you look, okay, the Rangers may actually cause some problems for people in the wild card race this time. They may actually sneak in as a wild card. It was one of those moments where you're like, okay, Rangers are starting to go this way instead of this way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think as I said, I think next year is the year that they seriously compete. I just don't think this is the year. I think it's a little too soon. I mean,
it's going to be.
They're a year early. They're a year early this year, but you can't expect a team as young as they are to really compete in the playoffs. It's Carolina, yeah, maybe because they've always had their number. But again, your goalies only played 13 games. Your top pair defensemen are both rookies. I mean, that's asking an awful lot.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking an awful lot. I mean, it's that kind of stuff doesn't happen in the NHL.
No, but I mean, like you said, you beat Carolina. It's a good step in the right direction. It's like, okay, we got into the playoffs, through weird means, but we won the first round and we went on to the next round. So it's like, okay,
Matt, if they lose 3-2, is it really that big a deal if they lose a tough 5-game series?
No, not at all.
Really not. It's really not. I mean, as I said, nobody was expecting the team to make the playoffs this year. At the beginning of the season, they still only had a 5% chance of making the playoffs, according to all the geniuses out there who were pumping them up. Well, I'm talking about the Vegas geniuses. So yeah, so it's kind of tough. At this point, I don't think they're ready. The Flyers are ready. I just think it's a question of it's just going to be really tough unless they can catch a break and either Boston or Tampa Bay get eliminated after the first when they have the second after the play-in round when they have the first round of the playoffs. If one of them gets eliminated and the Flyers don't have to play such a beastly combination of teams, I think they've got a shot. But I'm looking at the Islanders and what happened with the Islanders and the Penguins last year. They swept the Penguins last year, and then they went into that Carolina buzzsaw and they got hammered. I mean that's kind of what I'm saying. When you knock off a team that you consider your rival, sometimes, especially if you're a young team, it's very hard for them because they haven't been through it before. They get a little too full of themselves, and then they find themselves struggling against a team that it might be a little bit ahead of them and everything else. Prism 2-8 Adam Fox, I think, is going to be a very, very good. I think he's going to be mentioned in the Norris Trophy conversation in a couple of years. That's how high I think his ceiling is. Quite honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this, too. When it comes to the future of the Metropolitan Division, I still very much hate it because we're going to have, like we said, Pittsburgh and Washington are going to – they're on the decline.
It's going to be the Rangers, Flyers, and Islanders.
Yeah, it's going to be those three teams, And Columbus, you never know with them. They're the team that you stomp on. And they're like a cockroach. No matter how many times you stomp on them, they just keep coming back. They'll be that team that's like that team that comes up in that wild card race. It's just like, great, now we got to deal with Columbus again, and they're just a pain in the ass to deal with in the playoffs. But for the top three spots, you're right. It's going to be the two New York teams, and it's going to be Philly. It's going to be weird. It's going to be like back in the 80s, where it's like Pittsburgh isn't there and New Jersey's not there, Yeah,
it's because it's Sid, and I think we saw a couple of people making a comment about Sid before. Sid is getting old.
Yeah, he's starting to decline.
He's starting to decline a little bit. I think Malkin is going to be 36 next year.
Yeah, and his contract's up soon, so they may trade him. Who knows?
Well, they've been trying to, and nobody wants to give up a first round pick for him.
True, but he may wind up moving anyway. If it's his last year, they may get something for him.
Yeah, but they want a first round pick from everything I've heard. So that's asking a lot.
That is asking a lot, but if they're smarter and they decide, okay, let's do a little bit more realistic trade, they could probably accomplish it. We'll see if they'll let that go.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be a big one. Out west, I want to get back to the West again because the West. I think is a lot more. It's a lot more easy to pick than the East is. I think in the West, I think it's either going to be Colorado or St. Louis. You could make an argument for Dallas, although I don't believe in Dallas anymore until Dallas actually shows me. Dallas is giving me too many San Jose like performances in the playoffs for me to get behind them. I just don't believe in them.
The only other two teams I could see causing headaches, maybe Edmonton, if their offense is going well and they're not, their defensive sides.
Do you like their goaltending?
Their goaltending leaves a little bit to be desired, but I would. But I would. I'm sorry. I would say
I don't like that. I don't like their goaltending at all. So.
I mean, yeah, but who knows? You could have a goaltender get hot at the right time. I could see that totally happening for them, where there'll be some bullshit where their goalie's just hot, and because they have that offense, they can actually cause some headaches. But for Vegas too, they're another team that I would be a little bit on the lookout for because Vegas, if they get going and if Fleury's playing well, and they also decided to platoon him with the better backup that they have now instead of Malcolm Subban, who is not that good, which Vegas may be a tough team to deal with too if everything's going well for them. Those are the only two teams I would say currently that could cause frustrations.
I don't think Vegas. I think Vegas doesn't go anywhere this year. I think they're they went and they picked a fairly old team.
They did
out of expansion. They went and they got a lot of veterans, and a lot of those guys are now either done and gone, or there and hanging on by a thread. And as well coached as they are now, and as good as Fleury is, I don't know that when they have to play one of the elite teams in the playoffs that they're gonna. I don't think they can beat any of those teams. I don't think they could beat St. Louis. I don't think they could beat Colorado. I don't think they could beat Dallas either. But again, that's kind of where I'm at in the West right now. Still love the Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, I still think, though, at the end of the day, we do get Colorado in the Western Conference Finals, if not the Stanley Cup Final, because I think that, this is a hungry team, this is a young team. They got a taste of what the playoffs was like last year, and they absolutely just stunned Calgary into submission. And the only reason that they did not get into the finals last year was because San Jose decided to do some bullshit and managed to pull out a Game 7 victory out of their ass. That's the only reason why. But that Colorado team's ready. They're ready to pounce. It's time for them. Yeah,
I agree. And we got Bryce Blackwell, Flyers baby. I missed the other one, but Tyson Dixon, let's go Flyers. Thank you. And I think it's going to be very exciting. I think you're going to have a lot of fan interest this year in Philly. I think it's good for hockey when you have the Flyers being good, the Rangers being good. I think that's good for hockey because you know what? There are a lot of Ranger fans in this country. The Flyer fans travel well. At this point, the Bruins, as long as the Bruins are good, you're going to have – they have a very large contingent. Tampa Bay has a pretty large contingent. One thing about Tampa Bay, they're not the Panthers, okay? They had their standing. Their stands are filled for every game, so you can't put them in the same class as the Panthers at all.
No.
The one thing the Panthers will have an advantage about is home ice means nothing for them because nobody goes to their games anyway. So, them playing an empty arena, that's just what they do.
Yeah, the Florida is the Arizona of the East. So
yes, they are. So I don't know what the deal is with the fans in Miami, if they just don't like hockey or they don't do a good job marketing their team. I don't know.
I mean, well, to be fair, the team has been so, in recent years, they've been getting better, but they were so piss poor in the beginning, in the turn of the century. And then,
making the playoffs 3 out of 23 years or something like that.
Yeah, and it was just so weird. And when they made it, they would lose in the first round. They lost to the Devils in 2012. They lost to the Islanders the other year, which, everybody was like, whoa, the Islanders beat them? So, it was just –
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't know about. I mean, that's going to be a very interesting series, that Florida Devils series. Really,
it will be.
It totally depends on the goaltending in that series.
It does, but the thing is with Panthers, they are weird. Like, they're a team that haven't addressed their issues too much, and the problem is with them, it's like, what are you guys doing? Are you trying to build, or and then goaltending wise, Bobrovsky's not been there. And then, on the Devils side of things, well, you would have Mackenzie Blackwood, and he's a lot better than Bobrovsky was playing this year, and that's saying a lot. And Mackenzie was left out on an island.
That was the Islanders.
But even with the Islanders, but if you're talking about with the Islanders, goaltending wise, even with that, I mean, Bobrovsky's just been playing so poor.
I think Varlamov is there. They have Varlamov and Tomas. What the hell is his name? Grice. Yeah, those are the two goalies. I mean,
I'm not blown by them either. They're not wonderful either. But
Grice is one of those guys though. When he gets hot, he can carry the team.
True, which is why they made the playoffs the one time, because he did play so well.
Yeah, when he gets on a roll, he's so inconsistent. He'll have one game, he's great, and then the next game he's horrible. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of been his.
I could see that series could be ugly, but ugly in the way of you're just sitting back, just like, ooh, these two teams probably would have missed if this was by normal standards.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, I think Columbus would have found a way to make it because Seth Jones had just come back, and I think they were starting to play better hockey.
Absolutely.
And Cam Atkinson just came back too, so that was huge for them to get those two guys back.
And that's why I would say when we start getting back to the regular setup and everything like that for next year, and we start to see the players show up more, I would say, okay, we're starting to see a transition, Islanders, Rangers, Flyers. That's why I threw Columbus in there, because Columbus just seems to be that team that just hangs around. They don't go anywhere. It's like they could be a problem child for the near future for the Metropolitan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Prism, come on now. We know what that was. A lollipop and a chicken. We know what that is. Come on now.
But Brad Marchand's a piece of shit. So, we all know this.
Come back. We know that. This is not anything new, okay? He's replaced Sean Avery and Matthew Barnaby as the resident dirtbag. The only difference is that Brad Marchand also scores like 35 to 40 goals a season, which makes you even more angry because he does that.
Yeah.
It's bad enough that he plays the way he plays, and then the guy's always going to light the light on you, and that's even more infuriating. It's kind of like back in the day when Terry O'Reilly played for the Bruins.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, Terry realized that he can score goals too.
Yeah.
And another one who did the same thing with the Bruins was Cam Neely, who was a nasty player. And then all of a sudden, he realized, you know what, I can score 50 goals, so I'm going to do that.
What about one of the biggest candidates who's guilty of it, where he wouldn't do anything in the regular season, show up in the playoffs? Claude Lemieux.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that piece of shit, that when he was playing for the Devils, oh my God, Jesus!
No, I remember Adam Graves mugged him at the end of a playoff game one year.
Oh my God!
I mean, Lemieux he hadn't even done anything, and there was a face-off, and it was right near the end of the game, and Graves just went right after him.
And then of course, I would say he would be my most hated of the Devils from back in the day. But there's one person particularly because of the Flyers why he has to be number one, and that's Scott Stevens. He will always be number one as the biggest piece of shit.
nobody liked him either. I would agree, but there were a lot of guys in the Devils I couldn't stand. I couldn't stand Bobby Holik when he was on the Devils, and then the Rangers went and signed him to that massive deal, and I was like ready to be sick because I was like, come on, really?
Yeah, there were other players. I hated Gianna. I hated John Madden because he would always score in the playoffs. And then
what about the original Rat, not Marchand, but Linsman?
Oh yeah,
He played for the guys too.
Kenny Linsman. Yeah,
he was enough. Kenny Linsman, man, and he was also a very good playoff player as well.
Yes. Sean Avery made me want to buy tickets just to throw curses at him. I will never forget though when the Flyers played the Rangers, and Avery was on the team, and he had I think it was around that time where he had done that controversy with the whole sloppy seconds and everything like that, and so he's already promoted himself to scumbag of the league, and so the Flyers and him and Hartnell are like locking eyes, and they dropped the gloves, and Hartnell dropped him in 2 punches. I'm laughing my ass. I'm like, what? Like, I thought you could fight. What was that? Like,
no,
seriously.
Avery was not a fighter. Now Matthew Barnaby was a fighter.
Yeah, yes, that's true. He was.
He could go. I mean, he could really go. So, but Avery, I just remember what he used to do, what he did to Martin Brodeur, and he almost got killed by Stevens when he's taking his mask and purposely poking his mask so it cover his eyes.
And then he was standing in front of him. Yeah,
and taking his eyes and doing this at him. I mean, a lot of dirty stuff.
That whole time, and he pissed off Brodeur so much because the Rangers won that series, and Brodeur didn't shake his hand. Brodeur's like, "Fuck you! I'm not shaking your hand."
You can't blame him. He was impossible. So. Anyway, it's time for us to go, guys. Don't forget and we thank Matt for coming on. We really do appreciate it. Rob will be back next week. Don't forget, next week we will have former Eagle Freddie Solomon along with Grant Ledyard. Make sure you stay tuned for that. And for everybody, good night, and we'll see you next week.